Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday. November. November's gone. December the 2nd. How was the quiz yesterday?
I just messed up one small tiny thing.
You messed up one small tiny thing? Yeah? The part where I asked about the things? Yeah, that yeah, how'd you do?
It was good.
Yeah?
The second question, the one about vegan, what he had in common with
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah.
So I wrote down that both of them were okay using violence, but I don't know if there was anything else.
Yeah, I have to remember. I'm hoping some other answers will kind of jog my memory about that. But one of them was definitely that, right? But
Could this be one that he kind of like he kills people and the government also kills people?
yeah, that could be part of it. As I say, I'll have to read what other people wrote, and that will kind of.
They should give us like a heads up.
Jo-
The quiz before that, quiz 3, you said, I get to ask about B for Vendetta. Okay.
Mhm.
Then for this quiz, when B for Vendetta slide showed up, I told myself that, okay,
Oh, but he already
said
asked about it,
yeah,
so he wouldn't
already
ask
asked
about it
about
again.
again.
Whoa, that's loud. I see. I see.
So just,
What should we was telling?
What should we remember? Well, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it tomorrow when I hand the quizzes back. Yeah, I'll mark them tonight. Okay, let's say hi to people who are here. So Helen is here. Good morning, Helen. Ananda's here. Good morning, Ananda. Michaela's here. Hi, Michaela. Ayushi's here. Good morning, Ayushi. Ryan is here. Good morning. Good morning. Sorry. John is here. Good morning, John. And Hadil is here. Good morning. And Shania is here. Hello, Shania. And Adil's here. Good morning, Adil. And Kevin's here. Good morning, Kevin. Okay, let's dive back into where we were. That should read class 57, not 55, but oops. This is the end of the Cold War, right? And really the end of the Soviet Union, because that's of course how the Cold War will end. One adversary will basically disintegrate, and the other will remain, right? So we were talking on, what is today, Wednesday? We're talking on Monday about this guy, Mikhail Gorbachev, a member of the Communist Party, becomes the sort of general secretary or leader of the Communist Party, and later becomes the president of the Soviet Union as they kind of rework their constitution and kind of build in new positions, right? So he'll eventually become president of USSR, right? And so we know that Gorbachev, or I asked you to read this section of the text, and we know that he was kind of from the countryside, had some early successes, moved to Moscow, and kind of caught the ears of the Communist Party with his kind of innovative approaches, right? And we said that they were looking for someone younger as well, right? Their previous leaders, in the space of about 3 or 4 years, they lost 3 leaders, right? Brezhnev died, and then Andropov died, and then Chernenko died, and it was starting to look pretty bad, right? When your country's leaders are just dying every 5 minutes, right? So they were deliberately looking for someone younger that would hopefully not die within the year. And of course, Gorbachev doesn't. He's still alive, actually. We said that once he kind of got into power, he had some broad policies that he was trying to push for, right? And the first one is kind of an early thing that he said, this uskoryenia thing, this acceleration, basically saying we've got to get moving, right? The economy is stagnant, nothing's happening, production is down. We need to start moving here, right? And so he sets some higher quotas and tries to sort of stimulate the economy to various degrees. But really his main kind of reforms are the last 3, right? His attempts to democratize the Communist Party and the Soviet Union, and his policies of glasnost, which is openness, open communication, freedom of speech, if you will, and perestroika, right? A restructuring of both the economic and the political system in the Soviet Union. No small tasks, right? So Gorbachev isn't just tinkering with a few things. There's some pretty radical overhauls that are happening, right? And in the process, things kind of start to get away from him, right? Good morning, Rose. Things kind of start to get away from him because keep in mind that he is, he's got some reform ideas, but he's a socialist, right? He's a communist, and he wants to make communism work. And so all of these reforms are, for him, steps to achieve socialism, right? To really fix the socialist system in the Soviet Union. That's really what he's trying to do. And so all of these policies and changes that he's trying to make are in service of that goal. But as we're probably going to start to see today, or as we'll see today, they kind of get away from him, and things don't, the effects of his actions are not what he intends them to be. And so his democratization reforms, so allowing members of the Communist Party to be elected, and then creating that Congress of People's Deputies, which we'll talk about in a minute. Those are attempts at democratization, right? His glasnost policies allow people to speak freely, right? For the first time in decades, right? And so all kinds of horrible things that had happened under the reign of Lenin and Stalin, all kinds of, the inefficiencies, the backwardness, the bureaucracy, the ridiculousness of the communist system, those things could never be criticized before, and they start to be criticized now. And of course, this has major effects in Eastern Europe where, again, all those countries had communism imposed on them, right? And so the minute that they realize that the Soviet Union is not going to roll in with the Red Army, immediately they all overthrow their governments. They elect, reasonably democratic governments. They break down the Berlin Wall and reunite Germany. And so, again, what's that? Yeah, but it's interesting, right? Because remember, during the Hungarian Revolution, where the original Hungarian Revolution, where the Soviets crushed the revolution, we said that, one of the lessons learned was that what was really holding the Soviet bloc together was force, right? By threat of invasion, not ideology or any kind of common, feeling between the bloc. And I think that's proved right here, because as soon as Gorbachev says we're not going to intervene in other countries anymore, everybody throws out their communist leaders and starts creating a new system, right? So that lesson that was learned in '56 in Hungary is very much true, because again, as soon as the threat of force is gone, those Eastern European bloc countries throw out their communists and start again, right? So there's his acceleration here, his democratization. So he calls for multi-candidate elections for the Communist Party. Again, they all have to be from the Communist Party, but at least you can have your choice of communists. The greater freedom of expression under glasnost, we talked about that. And then perestroika, a kind of economic and political restructuring of the Soviet Union. The last thing, of course, I'm just going to jump ahead because we've seen this. One of the more significant things that Gorbachev does as well is propose this Congress of People's Deputies, right? So this is a group of citizens that are elected, and they go and they sit with the Communist Party and they vote and make their desires known to the Communist Party, right? So huge difference from before, right? No, not only is this democratically elected, but they're regular citizens, they're regular people, and they kind of get a seat at the table with the ruling party, right? And we said that in the video we watched, on Monday, we saw that one of one of Gorbachev's strongest critics, Boris Yeltsin, kind of uses this to gain power, right? We said he was a Communist Party leader, he was kind of an up-and-comer, but he was criticizing Gorbachev too much, right? Too heavily. And so Gorbachev demoted him to a lower position, which Yeltsin didn't really like, but instead he went and ran to be he wound up being he got elected to the Congress of People's Deputies and later becomes the president of Russia, right? And as soon as it becomes allowable for people to not be members of the Communist Party, Yeltsin quits the party. And so now, as they mentioned in the video, the most powerful man in the Russian Republic is not a communist, right? And so for the first time in 80 years, right? So huge change. And again, it's another example of something that Gorbachev is trying to do that gets away from him, right? He's just trying to get the people a seat at the table, right? So that they can express their views and make their choices. He's just trying to include the people in the process. But what kind of happens is that Yeltsin uses this as a path to power. But you could also look at it the other way. You could also say, well, you know, Yeltsin only gets into power because he's saying the things that the people want, right? The people want reform. They want change, and they want it to happen now, not later, right? So Yeltsin is really pushing for a lot of liberalization and a lot of reforms, okay? So yeah, we said that what we kind of wind up with coming into sort of 1990 or 1991 is a Soviet Union that has all of these socialist republics in it, right? Because the USSR is a union of Soviet socialist republics. So here there are 14 Soviet socialist republics. And of course each one will have a president, and Yeltsin of course is president of, yes, exactly, exactly. Where does that bring us to here? Oh wait, what's going on?
The video did talk about like the fall of the Union, but it didn't talk about the excitement about the tanks.
Yeah, well, we'll get to the tanks in just momentarily, because again, that's an exciting part of the story, right? Just give me 1 second here. I think I realized the mistake that I made earlier, so I just got to queue up. I just have to queue up another thing here. Just give me 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 4 seconds. Here we go. Hang on. There we go. This is 57. So where are we now? Oh yeah. There, right. So this guy, right? Boris Yeltsin. Again, first president of the Russian Soviet Socialist Republic, but also will become the first president of the Russian Federation. So after the Soviet Union kind of comes apart, this guy will be president, and he will be until, as you can see, until 1999 for 8 years. It's going to be a tumultuous 8 years. It's going to be a difficult 8 years for him. As a bit of a what? What?
Putin.
Yeah, before we get to Putin. It's going to be a tough few years for Boris Yeltsin here, spoiler alert. But as it turns out, switching from a communist socialist economy to a capitalist democratic economy is not easy. Yes, it's not so simple and no one's ever done it before, right? So Yeltsin is really going to be learning on the job in terms of how to change the country from one way of operating to the other. And so it's going to be a rough transition, but we'll get there, okay? So on Monday, so we watched part of that documentary, and I'd like to watch the rest of it today. And so for online people, just give me 1 second here. I'm going to post the links for the other Oh yeah, the other two pieces. So, just give me 1 second here. So for online people to watch the other parts of this documentary, like I mentioned, the third part was blocked by YouTube. And so fortunately I have it, and I have put it on Microsoft Teams for you. And so if you go to the file section, you'll see, I think it's called End of the USSR Part 3 or something like that. And so you'll be able to watch the video from there. And then the fourth part is still on YouTube, and so I've put that link into Microsoft Teams. So you'll see a message from me that says End of the USSR, and then there'll be a part 3 on Teams, and then there'll be a part 4. There'll be a part 4 on YouTube. And so what I'll do is I will, online people, I'll kind of cut you loose to watch the rest of it. There's about, in total there's about, I guess, 18 minutes left. And so I'm just gonna put 20 minutes on the clock here. And so online people, if you go and watch, if you go and watch the other two parts of the video, you should be back here in about 20 minutes. So we'll see you then, and we'll of course do the same thing. yeah, I don't think, sorry online people, we're just talking about the Arabic language. Yeah, I don't think it's an easy one to, it was certainly, it took us a long time. The course I took in university was a full year course, and we spent, we probably could have done it faster to be honest, but we just spent like, I think we spent like most of the first term just learning how to read and write, like just like the letters and how to write them. And then, what's that? I used to. Yeah, they taught us to write them. No, I don't remember any of that. But yeah, so we learned the letters of the alphabet and how they sound and how to write them and how to pronounce them. And then we started moving on to vocabulary and reading words, and then started putting them into sentences and the whole thing. And so, although my prof was a little distracted, I think he had a personal crisis going on, so he didn't spend a lot of time in the classroom. He was always running out to make phone calls. I think he was breaking up with his wife or something like that. I don't know. But it was interesting. It was an interesting class and interesting language. But
The pronunciations in Arabic are a lot tougher than the Persian. Like in Persian, just say, in Arabic they have so that comes from deep in your throat. The same goes for the sound.
And to Western ears, it's like, oh, that's the same sound.
The z sound, there are 4 z's in Arabic, 4 letters. They sound all the same in Persian, but each of them has its own sound.
It's true, right? If you don't, that's the thing. If you don't, sometimes, yes, certain sounds carry meaning, right? And so you have to know that, and then your ear has to be attuned to hearing those differences, right? And for foreign ears, sometimes it's difficult to pick that up, right? Think of, in English, think of like dog and dogs, right? There's just a little sound on the end of dogs that lets you know that there's more than one dog, but you have to be attuned to that difference. And speakers of a language will hear a difference, and then people who don't use that sound will not hear it, right? They'll miss it. Okay, so, right. So the Soviet Union is over, right? Just like that. And so what did we see there? Recap some events for me. Explain what happened to me today in that section of the video. Tanks rolled in. Why on earth did tanks roll in?
The hardliners didn't like Gorbachev. They decided to kind of kidnap him.
Right. So there's a small collection of hardline communists in the Central Committee, and they decide they're basically gonna overthrow the state, right? They're gonna have a coup. They're gonna get rid of Gorbachev, take control, and end this reform nonsense, right? That is tearing the country apart. How does that go?
I don't know, but I kind of thought that the Boris guy, Boris who?
The what?
Boris who?
Boris who?
Yeah, his last name.
Who?
Yeltsin.
Boris, yeah, Boris Yeltsin, yeah.
I kind of thought that the Yeltsin guy had the tanks, but it turned out that they rigged up the tanks and the Yeltsin guy rigged the people in.
Yeah, he was opposing the tanks.
Yeah, so the tanks give up to the people.
Yeah.
They don't shoot. Unusual, but they don't.
Yeah, so, and in the process, Boris Yeltsin has quite a moment, right? Like he's, the hardline communists are going to overthrow the state. They're going to send troops into the Congress of People's Deputies, right? The parliament where the people are. And there's Boris Yeltsin, right? Standing up there, they won't take our democracy from us, or whatever he was saying. I couldn't hear him very well. But he stands up there and gives a speech looking brave and strong and the defender of the people. He's on TV, right? TV cameras are there. Big moment, right? Big moment for Yeltsin, right? But of course, where's Gorbachev? Yeah, so he's out of the city, which is probably why they attempted the coup when they did, right? Because the leader was out. And I think Yeltsin was out of the country too, to be honest. So the leaders of this coup planned it where Yeltsin was at his summer, or not Yeltsin, Gorbachev was at his summer place having a little vacation, and Yeltsin, I think, was in Turkey or something. He was out of the country, and so these guys thought, this is our chance to seize the government. But unfortunately for them, Yeltsin manages to get back. He's up on the tank, defending democracy, defending the people. Looks real good, right? Unfortunately for Gorbachev, he is kind of arrested at his summer home and kind of imprisoned there, which again is what you want to do, right? If you're going to overthrow the government, just in case you ever find yourself in that situation, if you're ever going to overthrow the government, you want to make sure that the legitimate leader of the country cannot escape, right? You want to lock him up, make sure he can't speak to the people, just hide him away somewhere. Yes, keep that in mind. Well, and see how, they didn't manage to get a hold on Yeltsin, right? They didn't pinch Yeltsin beforehand, and so here he is rallying the people, and the coup fails, right? So, yeah, we have an attempted coup, which of course doesn't pan out. It's not very well planned. They don't really have the support of all of the army. They don't get a hold on Boris Yeltsin. It's kind of a poorly planned mess, right? Which is, typical for the Soviet Union at this point. But anyway, sorry, Soviet Union. So that it fails. And then what happens? Yeltsin makes a motion.
Yeah, Yeltsin suspends the Communist Party activities. He goes behind Gorbachev's back and signs a couple of papers. And
Right. So first of all, he says, I feel the Communist Party is, had a part in this coup, which they kind of did. Some members of the Communist Party did. So he moves to suspend all the activities of the Communist Party, right? So effectively he makes the Communist Party illegal in the Soviet Union, right? So everyone who's still working in government has to resign from the party in order to continue their role in government. So Gorbachev has to resign from the Communist Party in order to remain president of USSR, right? But then, as you point out, Yeltsin's kind of doing two things at the same time, right? He's kind of being duplicitous with Gorbachev. So he's working with Gorbachev here on one hand to draft a new constitution for the Soviet Union, now that all of these republics have autonomy and all this stuff. So he's working with him, but he's also talking to the leaders of the other republics, right? And so, what's that? Kind of two-faced, right? And so he's shaking hands with Gorbachev on one hand, and then he's getting ready to stab him in the back with the other. And so, yeah, so as you see there in, did they say December 19th? December 19th of 1991, Yeltsin, the president of Russia, Kravchuk, the president of Ukraine, and the president of Belarus, whose name I've forgotten. They don't mention him in the video, but I think he's in the textbook. They all get together and they say, you know what? We're out. We're joining a union of us three called the Commonwealth of Independent States. We are leaving the Soviet Union, right? And so, and yeah, weird, right? And then, but of course, all of the other Soviet socialist republics are also bailing out, right? They're all like, yeah, we're out of this union. We don't want to be part of it. And so, as we see, Gorbachev is eventually standing there, and he's president of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. And how many Soviet Socialist Republics are in the Union? 0. There are no republics in his union anymore. So he is the president of nothing. Yeah, he's a president of nothing. And so again, it's kind of a sad end for him personally, right? Because he's kind of worked so hard to preserve the Soviet Union and to make it into a strong, productive socialist country, and everything he does basically just backfires, right? Because again, there's been decades of people kind of suffering under the regime, right? And he's kind of, I don't know how you want to think about it, but maybe he's just naive to think that, you know, the people will want to reform this system rather than throwing it in the garbage and moving forward, you know, in a different way. And that's exactly what happens in Eastern Europe, right? As soon as the threat of the Red Army is gone, basically they all say, screw this communism stuff. We're headed westward, right? We're looking at democracy and capitalism. That's what we want. We don't want this old stuff. And unfortunately for Gorbachev, he doesn't really want, I don't think he wants to see that in the Soviet Union. And so he's making all these reforms thinking that eventually we will, you know, perfect socialism and the people will be happy. But again, the more kind of freedom that the people get and the more power the people get, the more people say, you know what, we're done with this stuff. Like it's been decades and we still can't feed our people from our agricultural production, right? Like the same problem that Lenin was dealing with in 1920, they're still dealing with in 1980, right? And so the people have had enough. They've had enough of empty store shelves. They've had enough of, you know, a lower quality of life than anyone else in kind of the developed world, quote unquote. And so, yeah, they're done with it, right? And so, again, the historian in the documentary points out that Russia and Ukraine and Belarus kind of leaving the Soviet Union is not a democratic move, right? And they mentioned earlier that there's a referendum on whether the Union should stay together or not. And, you know, it's kind of an inconclusive referendum, right? It's an inconclusive vote, but lots of republics vote to stay in the Union, right? But still, for better or worse, right or wrong, whether it was the will of the people or not, Yeltsin and these two other Republican presidents, they kind of make a bit of a backroom deal, and suddenly basically the USSR is over, right? There's no republics left in Gorbachev's union, and so what else can he do, right? Except go on TV and resign his position, right? Because he's president of nothing anymore, which again is I think it's a little bit sad for him, right? It's a little bit, you know, it's not really what he wanted. It's not really what he was trying to do, but, you know, everything, all of his reforms and his attempts at giving people more freedom just gave them the freedom to start pulling apart the old way, right? And, you know, I think it's very much a Pandora's box situation, right? Where he kind of let these things out, like democracy and freedom of speech and things like that. And once they were out, you know, he couldn't control them anymore. And
Why did they go on and assassinate Boris? Since when are they afraid of doing that?
well, that's the thing, right? Is that that's what Gorbachev said. He's like, what should I have done? Should I shoot, you know, the Congress of People's Deputies? He's like, yeah, he's like, crossed my mind. I don't know how seriously it crossed his mind, but, you know, it is the Soviet Union, right? But yeah, he decides no, he's going to do things the democratic way, right? And so he, you know, you have to give him that, is that he was committed to his principles, right? And he was committed to what he was trying to do all the way till the end, when it kind of spectacularly failed, right? And so he, you know, he acted in accordance with his conscience and what he believed. And, you know, the things that he thought would happen, it turns out he was wrong, right? The things that he thought the people would want, he was wrong, right? So, you know, for better or worse, again, it's a bit of a sad end for him because he didn't really achieve what he was trying to achieve. But it's also, I don't know, maybe on a personal level, he did stick to his values and his convictions, right? He did, you know, try to behave in a manner that was in alignment with the things he thought was important. And, you know, one of the historians mentions, of course, that, you know, he had a lot going on, right? He had a lot on his plate, from Eastern Europe to the West, to the republics inside, to the state of the economy and the people protesting, and then there's a coup from the inside, and he's battling Yeltsin all the time, and he's battling people who are saying he's going too slow and too fast, and like the fact that he kind of holds it all together for that long, like the historian mentions, pretty remarkable, right? That he manages not to crack under, you know, what I can only imagine is a ridiculous amount of pressure. But
So is Boris now known for abolishing the Soviet Union?
well, he's definitely notable for that. But we'll,
He didn't do, if had it not been for Gorbachev, he wouldn't have been there in the first place to abolish it.
it's true. Both of these guys have a pretty important role to play in ending the Soviet Union and kind of creating the Russian Federation as we know it. And as we'll talk about, we'll take a break in a second here. But as we'll talk about, Yeltsin will become notable for, again, being the first president of Russian Federation, and then for his efforts to try to convert one system to another, right? How do you convert a, you know, socialist, autocratic state to a democratic, capitalist state? Well, it turns out, it's not as easy as you might think. And Yeltsin, of course, thought it would be easier than it was. And again, and nobody had ever done this, right? The Soviet Union is basically the first socialist communist state in history, and this is the first time that one has kind of come apart and now is trying to completely switch gears into a different type of economy and political system. And again, it doesn't go real well for the first number of years, and that's what will bring Vladimir Putin to power.
So was he like the prime minister, like the second in command in Russia?
We will get to that. You're right, but we'll get to that. Okay, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about more Russia. Okay, and we're back. Ryan, if you're listening, I was supposed to call you during the break, but I was just helping another student. I'm going to call you right after class ends, if that's okay. All right. So maybe just if you can give me a thumbs up on Teams or in the live chat here, that would be great. And I apologize for that. I just wanted to help out another student. So I'll call you right after class is done, if that's okay. Okay. So here we are at the end of the Soviet Union, right? And so heading into 1991, we know that the economy is kind of a, okay, thanks Ryan, I apologize for that. So we see that the economy is gross, the economy is busted, the political system is a little bit chaotic, and there's a pretty active power struggle going on between Mikhail Gorbachev, the president of the Soviet Union, and Boris Yeltsin, the president of Russia, right? And so we saw in the video that there's a coup, right? An attempted overthrow of the state by 8 members of the Central Committee and some military generals who are kind of friendly to them. And so they try to push these 2 leaders aside and take control of the parliament buildings. Oh, he's in Kazakhstan, sorry, not Turkey. So yeah, Gorbachev is kind of arrested at his dacha. Dachas are little summer places that a lot of Russians have. So he's at his dacha. They arrest him there. Yeltsin is out of town, and so the tanks roll in to try to take control of the government. But fortunately, Yeltsin is able to get back in time. Fortunately, this coup is a bit of a Yahoo operation, and it's not very well planned. And so the coup is kind of foiled, right? And again, Yeltsin has this great moment standing on a tank, you know, in front of the army saying, they won't take our democracy from us. TV cameras are rolling. Great moment, right? As a politician, nailed it, right? And unfortunately for Gorbachev, he's not there, right? And so after that coup, of course, the Communist Party's activities are suspended, and so everybody has to quit the Communist Party. And again, while Gorbachev and Yeltsin are trying to work out kind of a new power-sharing arrangement for the Union, Yeltsin is kind of working behind Gorbachev's back, right, to try to extricate himself from the Soviet Union. And so here on December 8th, I think I said December 19th, but that was wrong, December 8th, which is in 6 days, the presidents of Russia and Ukraine and Belarus get together and they sign the Belaveja Accords. And so this creates the Commonwealth of Independent States, and it removes them from the Soviet Union. And so again, by the time we get to December 25th, we see that Gorbachev is the president of a union of Soviet socialist republics that has no Soviet socialist republics in it. And he resigns, right? And so I don't know why everything happens on December 25th. It seems like so many historical events seem to happen on Christmas Day. I don't know why. I would like to know why, but it seems like a huge number of historical events happen on that day. But anyway, he resigns, and yeah, finally the Soviet flag is lowered and the Russian flag is raised, and the Soviet Union is no more. Whoops. So after the Soviet collapse, so the Soviet Union is no more, right? All we have is a collection of republics who are now autonomous, and they're trying to kind of find their own way and figure out how to run their governments and their economies, and what their relationship is going to be to the other Soviet republics, and what their relationship is going to be to the West. It's a very chaotic time. It's a time in which nobody really knows what's going on. It's probably very exciting, but it's also probably exciting in the negative way as well, because, you know, things are pretty loosey-goosey for a while. And there's big questions, right? So again, the Soviet Union had a seat on the UN Security Council, right? So who's going to occupy that seat now? As it turns out, the Russian Federation will take it over. There's a big question about nuclear weapons. So a few classes ago, we talked about the fact that the Soviet Union had thousands and thousands and thousands of nuclear weapons. Who owns those now? Where are they? Who is in control of them? Who has the key and their finger on the red button, right? This is a major...
Shouldn't be the Russians, technically, because the Red Army was Russian.
Yes, but now the Red Army is...
It's just the Russian army.
Yeah, but there's missiles in Kazakhstan, right? And Turkmenistan and Azerbaijan and probably... And so, again, who are those governments? Who's in charge of them? Are they trustworthy or credible? Are they going to sell this technology on the black market? Are they going to launch it against their neighbors? Who's in control, right? Who's got their finger on the button? And so again, this is a major question, right? Because before it was the Soviet Union that was in control. Now the Russian Federation is in control of a lot. But again, you don't need a lot of nuclear weapons to really make a mess, right? So again, there's a pretty clear question of, we have to account for all of these weapons. And so again, the UN and the US get involved, and they start transferring all of those nuclear weapons back into the Russian Federation. And so Russia will hold those weapons, and they will sort of extricate them from the republics, right? Just so they're all in the hands of one country, right? There's a number of ethnic conflicts in former republics. So lots of these republics are made up of non-Russians or large quantities of non-Russian people. And so they've kind of been under the control of the Russians for so long, and they want autonomy, right? Nationalism. Nationalism raises its head again as the Kazakhs want to, run Kazakhstan in the Kazakh way, right? According to Kazakh culture and values, not to Russian values, right? And so again, there's struggles between the Russians who have been in power and the Kazakhs who maybe want more power, right? And so lots of these republics are going to have to try to figure out their kind of power arrangement. And again, the big question, well, another big question, of course, is what is the Soviet Union going to become, or what is the Russian Federation going to become? Is it going to be a democracy, or is it going to be a dictatorship, or is it going to be something else? What will come of this? What's going to come of this country that has just been born, right? And of course, nobody knows. In December of '91, heading into 1992, nobody knows what's going to happen. I'll show you that later. So, the Russian Federation. Oh yes, so I'm going to ask you to read this section because it's going to talk about what's going on in the early years of the Russian Federation. There's some things to read, and there's also some added information that I'll give you that will be very helpful as well. But I'll let you read first. It's only a few pages. And for online people, I just have to put this into Microsoft Teams, and so I'll do that right now. And so you'll see that appear in a moment, but for online or for in-class people, I'll let you start reading these few pages, okay? Okay, online people, the thing you need to read should be in Microsoft Teams now. Okay, good people. So we're just about out of time here, but as you can see, um, it's going to be a bit of a rocky ride for Boris, right? And so he has gotten rid of Mikhail Gorbachev. He has succeeded in extracting Russia from the Soviet Union and basically bringing about the end of the Soviet Union. But the path to, a better life for Russians is going to be rocky over the short term, right? Again, nobody's really done this before. Nobody knows how to take a centrally planned socialist economy and convert it to a capitalist economy. And some of the things you might be seeing is that there's, or maybe not seeing, but as you might imagine, a a capitalist economy, when it's functioning, like here, let's say here in Canada or the US, there are a lot of regulations, right? There's a lot of regulations, there's a lot of laws, there's lots of oversight. There's lots of things that keep the machine running well, right? But for Russia, when Russia becomes a country and they start to move toward capitalism, none of those things exist, right? There's no laws, there's no regulations, there's no oversight, particularly around corruption or money laundering or anything like that, right? There's no controls, right? It is the Wild West of the economy here. And so, again, Boris Yeltsin is going to try to switch to a different economy while keeping the economy going. But of course, there are none of those kind of controls or regulations or safeguards in place. And so, as you kind of read about, and I'll try to explain tomorrow, things get out of control pretty quickly, right? And so we have people selling off state assets. Some people become wildly poor. Some people become incredibly rich, to the point where some of the richest people in the world continue to be what they call the oligarchs, the men who were around right at the beginning of the Russian Federation and managed to get their hands on state assets and state companies. And so some of the richest people in the world come out of this period where they were able to grab more than everyone else, and they were kind of in the right place at the right time with the right connections, and they were able to seize control of these things. And so, again, it's going to be, for the average Russian, it's going to be a rocky road after the fall of the Soviet Union as they try to convert to a new way of doing things. But we'll deal with that tomorrow because we're out of time. So that's it for today, good people. I'll let you go, and I'll see you tomorrow, and we'll deal with what goes on with Boris Yeltsin and then with Vladimir Putin. Okay. See you tomorrow.